Thank you so much, Jonathan. And wow, Dr. Yolanda, I was so impressed by the data and statistics that you shared with us from Mexico. So congratulations. And it's I'm so excited to be here today. As Jonathan said, my name is Monica Kerrigan. I'm the managing director for the North America and Europe Hub at FP 2030. And I want to start off by giving Jonathan a huge shout out and a vote of appreciation. The World Vasectomy team has been raising the critical issue of gender equality for men and boys and reimagining what the world could look like if we continue to invest in bringing men and boys into the conversation and into our programs. And it's a big job for all of us. So thank you. On behalf of FP 2030, I'm so pleased to be here. I wanted to share that we have now 5 regional hubs that we launched this year, one in Latin America and the Caribbean, 2 in Africa, one in Asia and the Pacific. And they are all there to accelerate progress on rights-based family planning. This is a country-led, regionally driven, and globally connected mandate. And we believe that every person has the right to decide if and when they want to become pregnant. Reproductive rights and gender equality are core to our work. And we believe that SRHR and family planning programs must include men and boys in ways that reduce power imbalances and advance gender equality. And men and boys are essential to these conversations. So I'm excited to start this conversation today with 5 outstanding panelists. They are known as pioneering leaders and innovators in FP and SRHR. And so we're going to start off with a different question for each panelist. We'd like you, the audience, to have your own questions. And then we'll get started with first answering their questions, and then we're going to answer your questions. So let's get started with Miles Kempley from London. Miles, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself, but we'd love to hear what prompted SIF to invest in male-focused approaches as part of its SRHR investment portfolio, and why has SIF backed the World Vasectomy Day campaign? And we're curious what your plans are and what you're going to be doing in this space moving forward. So over to you, Miles.
Thanks, Monica. Can you hear me okay?
Beautifully, thank you.
Oh, great. And it's such a pleasure to be here. So, hello, everyone. My name is Miles Kempley. I work for the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, or SIF. I am the executive director for our work on SRHR. And we are a strong supporter of the World Vasectomy Day campaign. We are a foundation that is completely committed to comprehensive SRHR for all. Those that know us know we have a large and growing portfolio on contraceptive access, safe abortion or post-abortion care, and HIV prevention. And this includes a commitment to vasectomy. Also, I want to call out our partners, many of whom are the real leaders in designing male-focused approaches. And we've been working with those partners on male engagement initially for about a decade. And I thought I'd just share some of the things that we've learned. So we've had successes and failures as a funder, and we've been prepared to take risks. A few of those that I wanted to share. Firstly, we know that changing gender norms underpins a male-focused approach. Starting early is a best buy, and work on gender transformative sexuality education is vital but hard. I can tell you that as a foundation, we found it difficult to scale. But secondly, on scaling contraceptive access with dedicated effort, we've seen measurable changes in men's perceptions, even in the hardest to reach settings. Our partners that worked with unmarried and young couples in rural Ethiopia and Nigeria have demonstrated how leading with conversations on household health, wealth, and well-being can deeply influence men's engagement, their responsibilities, and has significantly increased the performance of those programs. And then thirdly, the importance of joining the dots across SRHR. Many of us will know, SIF is a big backer of new tools and choices that can break down barriers. And this has been especially noticeable in the field of sexual health and HIV. Back in 2018, we joined the MenStar Coalition that was set up to scale HIV self-testing for men. It has been remarkably successful, reaching over 2 million men across sub-Saharan Africa. But it did this by changing perceptions about why testing matters, why it's relevant, alongside a total transformation in access. And that's offered important lessons for family planning. So where are we now? As a foundation, SIF, I think, better appreciates now how prevalent gender norms affects our work and how genuinely gender transformative work is hard but essential for us to make progress. Back in 2021, at the Generation Equality Forum, we committed $500 million of funding to SRHR over the next 5 years. And while we're ahead of that plan, more important has been how it's influenced our thinking, especially as it relates to equity. Our passion for innovation is undimmed, but it is now more evenly balanced by our commitment to equity, and within equity are the importance of a focus on men and boys. Which leads me to our support for the World Vasectomy Day. This is a campaign that I'm happy to say SIF really loves. We are impatient to see more attention given to vasectomy as a routine and core component of successful FP programs. And SIF is keen to back national FP programs that want to achieve this. There is no doubt this is a challenging space, but we think there is a chicken and egg situation here. Yes, vasectomy represents a tiny fraction of contraceptive use in regions that we prioritize in sub-Saharan Africa, but it is also an even smaller fraction of total spend. And insufficient investment in supply side, in promotion, and in policy support has the effect of suppressing potential demand. Yet, we know we have proven models for how to make male-focused approaches work. We really appreciate World Vasectomy Day's campaign because it shines a spotlight on how we can break down barriers to choice. And choice is what this is ultimately all about. Because without growing access to vasectomy services, we are holding back choice. So looking to the future, 3 things that I'd like to close with and hand over with. Firstly, we are a foundation that is now prioritizing scale as we work towards 2030 goals. We want to partner with countries and organizations that have scalable interventions in male-focused approaches. Secondly, SIF is a modest funder in comparison to others, and we want to urge all funders to increase their commitments and to embed best practices for male-focused work. And SIF will do its part. We will also do our part to encourage new funders into this space. And finally, I'd just like to say the World Vasectomy Day campaign is an important opportunity to deliver momentum. And our intention is to back this campaign going forward. And we would strongly encourage engagement from the SRHR and wider health community in getting behind it. Thank you, Monica. Back over to you.
Wow, what a way to start off this Friday, Miles. You just hit a couple of home runs there, and we really and greatly appreciate SIF's support. I want to just underline a few things that Miles said. Being an impatient optimist, being bold, but also thinking of scale. So designing programs at scale. And our second speaker today, I think, is going to also help us talk about that, Miles. So thank you so much, Erin Milkey. Erin from USAID. We are so grateful to have you here today. You've been a long supporter, USAID has been a long supporter of male engagement and vasectomy, supporting male and female methods and choice. And it's one of the high impact practices being supported by USAID missions and implementing partners. So Erin, can you please share a few highlights of USAID's investments in male contraception? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Muchos saludos a todos. I'm really excited to be part of this World Vasectomy Day celebration. And I just want to start by saying that the reason male engagement is so important to me is because men and boys are half of the equation for family planning. Around the world, we often see family planning programs that are completely focused on women and girls. And it is a huge missed opportunity if we do not pay attention to the needs and interests of men and boys in family planning. And if we expect to see changes towards more equitable gender roles and norms, we need to work with women and men and girls and boys. So turning to USAID's history with male engagement and male contraception, especially, since the late 1960s, USAID has procured both male and female contraceptives, including condoms. In 1977, USAID issued its first policy guidelines on voluntary surgical male and female sterilization, emphasizing voluntarism and informed choice, which are foundational principles for all of our family planning programs. For permanent methods, this means voluntary, knowing assent from the individual after being advised of the surgical procedures to be followed, the related discomforts and risks, expected benefits, the availability of alternative family planning options, the purpose of the operation and its irreversibility, and the option to withdraw consent at any time prior to the operation. USAID has also supported the introduction of the no-scalpel vasectomy technique in countries across Latin America, Asia, and Africa through programs that address supply, demand, and the enabling environment. And we have also supported programs to offer the standard days method, which requires both male and female active participation. And historically, programs have tended to view men as barriers or have had deep skepticism about their willingness to participate in contraceptive use. At USAID, we're committed to doing more to engage men, but not at the expense of women and their needs. Interventions must always consider how to engage men without infringing on the rights of women. And so to do this, USAID has 5 principles of male engagement. The first is, you'll hear some parallels with what we just heard from Miles at SIF. The first principle is to start early, to build adolescents' knowledge and to form healthy, gender equitable attitudes and sexual and reproductive health behaviors. The second is to cultivate an enabling environment and ensure safe spaces for men and women to challenge norms. The third is to implement gender transformative, never exploitative programs. The fourth, to employ gender synchronized approaches to ensure mutually reinforcing change among men and women. And the fifth is to design with women's needs, concerns, and rights in mind and maintain accountability with women's groups. So I'll stop there, but I could talk more about our approaches to male engagement.
Thank you so much, Erin. And let's see what questions our participants have for each of you. Thank you very much. And it's amazing to see the synergies between SIF and USAID, both your optimism and also your the focus on starting early and bringing both youth into the equation and creating this enabling environment for men and boys. So thank you so much. We're going to turn now to Julia Boulos from the Bergstrom Foundation, and I just want to give a big shout out to the Bergstrom Foundation for their great work in Latin America. And I was wondering, Julia, if you could share with us, some of the positive trends that are taking place in Latin America and why the Bergstrom Foundation is so excited about WVD and this campaign. Over to you, Julia.
Hi, hello, everybody. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Jonathan, for all this. And my name is Julia Boulos, and I work for the Bergstrom Foundation. The Bergstrom Foundation is dedicated only... Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. The Bergstrom Foundation is dedicated to just work on sexual reproductive health and abortion. And we only work in Latin America and 9 countries in East Africa. those are the two only areas that we work, and we're going to continue to work on that. Something that it's good to see, and I agree with Miles and Aaron, is that our projects we're always been interested that our projects offer all the methods to the people we reach, mostly in rural areas. So we want to make sure our programs offer from condoms to permanent methods. And something we've seen in the past is that people didn't want to talk about permanent methods, especially to young people. They would say, why? We can't talk to them about it. And that's something that I'm glad to see that is changing. And because it is important to talk to them. It's important for them to know that they have an option once they have the number of children that they need. So I think that is positive. We've seen a huge change in the acceptance of vasectomies in Latin America, especially. I would say that a few years back, if we had one vasectomy per year in some projects was a success. And now, we're seeing hundreds. And I think one thing that we see in Latin America is that a lot of younger men are taking, which is it's different than in Africa, for example. And I think a lot of the reasons we've heard are that they just don't want to have children. There's a lot of men that early on know that they don't want to have children, or others that have raised their siblings and they just don't want to do it anymore. So there's a big difference between Africa and Latin America in that sense. A biggest barrier that I see is that there are not many providers or services to offer. So a lot of all our projects subsidize these methods and taking men that want to private providers that are offering. But something important would be if the government started offering services, right? If the governments could provide more of this and train more doctors and make these services more available. I think World Vasectomy Day is doing a great job. We've been supporters from them for a few years now. We believe that their work is great and has brought to the attention of more men.
Thank you so much, Julia. And it is great that, you also are underlining the importance of choice and starting early. So important, but so important to engage people in that choice for men and boys as it is for, women and girls. So really appreciate this. We're going to shift to a panelist who has been working with the Male Contraceptive Initiative. And it's a very exciting new initiative. And Logan, I look forward to, having you introduce yourself. One of the things that Logan has been doing and the MCI has been doing is looking at male preferences. So Logan, the question to you is, what do we know about men's preferences for different forms of contraceptive products? And is there anything in particular that men see themselves using? What's the future of male contraception? So over to you, Logan, and welcome aboard.
Excellent. Thanks, Monica. And thanks, Jonathan, for putting this together. I'm really excited to speak, and I really get engaged and excited by all the good work that World Vasectomy Day does. Before I get started, I do want to echo some of the things that the other panelists mentioned. Engaging men is so important, especially young men, in a way that supports their partners and creates a supportive, communicative, and equitable environment. I think this is really something that we all drive towards, and especially at MCI, our vision is reproductive autonomy for all. That really means that everybody has the tools and the choices the tools in front of them to make the choices that they need for family planning. And we feel that men are an underserved group that can really do with more tools. So within MCI, I'm MCI's research director, and I manage our portfolio of grants and investments. But as an organization, we support research and development towards the development of novel methods of male contraception, new methods that can capture more of a populace and generate products that have characteristics different than condoms and vasectomies. We understand that men are not a monolith, and there need to be more and more options on the market to bring them in a way that supports their partners and allows them to contribute equitably to family planning. So as far as what sort of products are coming down the market and what sort of things men might be interested in, there's actually been a lot of discussion about this over the last call it 20 years or so. As far as existing methods go and men's interest in them, we know there are limitations, but men are still interested in using condoms and vasectomies, as we all here are aware. It makes up about 25% of the total contraceptive use, even with only those two methods. So it stands to reason that if we offer new forms of male contraception, men should be interested in them as well and want to really participate in the family planning process. There's data about men's interest in new methods of male contraception. There was a really landmark publication that happened about almost 20 years ago now that measured in 9 countries and saw that somewhere around 55% of men globally are interested in male contraception. I think that ranged from the 20s in some countries all the way up into the 70s in others. And so we can see that there's a high variability of men's interest in male contraception depending on country context and geography, things like that. But at the same time, that indicates that there's a broad interest in male contraception, right? There's almost 4 billion men in this world, and with all sorts of variables and personal considerations. So, in the end, even a low end of 20 to 30% of men interested in male contraception is in novel forms of male contraception. It's a big chunk. From that study, that one that happened almost 20 years ago, it showed that a lot of men are interested in a male pill as a primary form of a novel male contraceptive that they'd be interested in. But at the same time, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that men they're familiar with oral contraceptives. That's something that they're aware of. MCI has actually done some recent market research. And then as well, we supported market research with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And those two studies together, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation co-funded work is actually going to be coming out soon. I'm happy to talk about some of that now. But just to say that those results show that men are actually interested in a wide variety of methods. Maybe some men see themselves using a daily pill. Maybe some men see themselves using an implant or an injectable, or some men see themselves using as an option that's similar to vasectomy, but maybe has more potential for reversibility. These men are interested in all of these forms of contraception with high variability between them. And so it indicates that really we need a wide variety of products out on the market to meet the unmet need within men. We talk a lot about unmet need within family planning, and I think that men's unmet need is not well considered. We need to consider the fact that men can not only participate equitably in the family planning process, but they can really make a difference in unplanned pregnancy rates. There's actually research as well to show that that the introduction of novel male contraceptives can reduce unplanned pregnancy rates. I think it's very important for us to not get too focused on one particular type of product, but instead think about the sort of feasibility of product development as well as the acceptability of specific kinds of products and try and shoot the gap between that. Because in the end, the scientific feasibility of developing something may be difficult for one type of product that may become in a gel or an implant or in daily oral. But at the same time, it's important for us to get as many options out on the market as possible because, again, men are not a monolith. Finally, I think it's important for us to also consider the role of partners in male contraceptives, especially novel male contraceptives. Both partners are generally involved in the contraceptive decision-making process. And it's important for us to understand also that women still bear the burden of pregnancy, and the considerations for what kind of product is going to be out there need to take into account the needs and considerations of female partners as well. So in the end, to sum it all up is to say that, men have preferences for a wide variety of products. They see themselves using daily oral pills. They see themselves using implants. Generally, the more invasive a method is, men see themselves using less and less of it. But at the same time, some of those methods have long-acting reversible capabilities. They can offer product characteristics that can really change what we think about contraception and change what we feel who uses contraception and change what contraception can really mean for them. That can mean long-acting reversible contraceptives for men, but it can also mean on-demand contraceptives for men. There's research and development in all sorts of phases that I think can create innovative products that really change people's perceptions of who uses contraception and what does that look like. And I really hope that continued investment and focus in this area can generate excitement, generate new products that people use, and of course, generate a new world where men are really engaged and participate productively and supportively in the family planning process. So thanks, Monica. Back to you.
Yeah, I love that. And again, you underline many of the things that some of the other speakers have talked about, that importance of choice, the importance that men are half the equation, you know, the 4 billion, they too are half the sky. And how do we, like, you also mentioned the partners, you know, we have sex with other people, right? What are their preferences, and how do we talk about that and bring both couples and partners into that equation? So I'm super excited what MCI is doing. I think, you know, you're one of the newest players in this space, and I think we have a lot to learn from you. So let's segue to our last speaker, and then we're going to get to some other questions. But Sheila Gabea, welcome, and congratulations on the success of WVD globally. You have done a lot of work in Africa, and we're really interested in hearing about, you know, what do you think you know, is worth investing in men's health in Africa, and why? So over to you, Sheila.
Thank you so much, Monica. And it's very good to see Julia and Miles and Logan and Erin talk about these issues. And some of the words, everyone took them out of my mouth. But to think of the time we are living in now, we are living in a time of gender equality. And I think Miles Kempley just mentioned this about family and community well-being, and why it's important for us to have both men and women involved in family planning decisions so that we can, for the best well-being of their families. And we're also living in a time of gender equality, whereby we are saying that men have to take a seat on the table to have these conversations on family planning, on sexual and gender-based violence, mental health, and all these conversations help us to get a broader understanding of the work that we are doing, and a broader understanding, and a broader understanding of health and well-being of communities as a whole. And I want to go back to why it's important for us for funders to invest in Africa. When we came here in Zambia at the beginning of this year, Zambia had done 7 vasectomies in 2021, 4 vasectomies in 2022. However, they had done 7,000 tubal ligations in 2021 and over 5,000 tubal ligations in 2022. So what we saw is there was a need of couples who are looking for a permanent family planning method, but it was so skewed to one side of tubal ligations. And we wanted to understand, we did a needs assessment of why so many people wanted a permanent family planning method, but only tubal ligations were being done and not vasectomies. One of the things that we found that was definitely, and this happens in all countries in Africa, is the limited access to accurate information about vasectomies, the limited medical supplies. When you want to do a no-scalpel vasectomy, you need to have the right tools to do that. Sometimes we've had to import the tools from Canada to do the vasectomies that we did in Zambia. Not a lot of people have access to those kinds of organizations that can send them tools. And the third thing we saw was health providers were more comfortable doing tubal ligations than vasectomies. So when a couple walked in, they did not even talk about vasectomy. They only talked about tubal. And if a couple asked, is there any other thing that a man can do? They're not going.
Sheila, your internet is
also
gone
an
down.
option, because then 1% support. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little better now.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So with the support of SIF and DKT and Bergstrom,
Which one?
in Zambia this year, 18 workers.
Sheila, I think your mic, the internet is down.
Workers.
Yeah.
Hello?
You're having trouble, Sheila. I think the internet's a little slow in your home there.
Hello?
If you can, yeah, I think she froze there. Let me just jump in just to do a little bit while she figures out the internet. But I just want to say that the biggest, when we went to Africa the first time, I was actually at the International Conference of Family Planning in 2016. And I was saying to people, we go anywhere. And they said, what's the hardest country? And they said, go to Kenya. I said, okay, so we'll do Kenya in 2016. So we did Kenya in 2016, and it was hugely successful. And we started to see that there was the possibility, but it took so much effort and time. And it started to really, it was just slow, and it needed to have that consistency and the support. And we sort of took a little bit of a, we kept going at it, slowly but surely. Sheila kept going every year. We started to do programs. But this year, with the support of both the Bergstrom Foundation, DKT, and of course with SIF's money, we were able to spend a lot of time and stay there. And Sheila had moved down to Lusaka in Zambia, and all of a sudden it started taking off. And we did a training in February. It was hugely successful. She had mentioned that they'd done 7 vasectomies the year before. We recruited 60 men, and we were just getting started, and then the funding again, it kind of took a dip and started to slow down. And then again, SIF came back on board. Back in September, we started up again, and started in September 27th. Sheila and her team, which is an amazing group, started to go out there. We had these great promoters. Originally, in the first campaign of the 25 community health workers, there were men, 17 of them got vasectomies. So they'd gotten vasectomies. They went out to recruit, and in the last 6 weeks, they've done around 128 vasectomies. So they'd gone from 7, and this year we'll be passing over 200. And we see it starts to grow. And you can see how the way World Vasectomy Day works is it very much turns the men into champions very quickly, about inspiring men to get out there and be part of the conversation, and to get out there and so that they feel like the ownership of it, and that the doctor that we trained is a fantastic doctor, Dr. Robert Kachacha, and that whole thing about having the right supply, the right doctor who really is committed to it and feels part of this community, and then having the sort of fantastic community health workers who are part of it. And I just wanted to say, part of the strategy of World Vasectomy Day has been very much about building teams within universities. Just this last week, we had 2 courses, one in Spanish and one in English, and between the 2 of them, there were almost 1,000 medical students. So we're really working hard to start at that age, because the doctors are just critical in terms of having the confidence. Somebody said about doctors had to have the confidence to do it, and also the doctors just feeling, again, like feeling part of something that matters. That idea that Yolanda was talking about giving these doctors a sense of shared value, shared purpose. And that why World Vasectomy Day is different from other campaigns is very much because it's about building a movement. It's really always been about that. It's really, the vasectomy was the hook. It was the challenge. It was kind of the transformative moment for men to kind of go, as we say, from procreators to protectors, to give them this role to play. And that's what's really worked. That's been what's been successful. And we see it happening, and we see it now in Bolivia. We see it in Mexico. And I think one thing that we've noticed, and this is really important because it's not really, we cannot take credit at World Vasectomy Day. It's men are changing. There is a changing attitude around men. It's just like, if the family planning world isn't getting that, they're not out there in the world. But men are operating on these multiple levels. So when we talk about men in this kind of uniform way, I think we're missing the boat, because there's new generations that are coming up that are very, very aware of the fact that the number of children they have is going to impact their ability to pursue the lives they want. And it's amazing. We've done many live vasectomies. I've never once recruited a guy to pre-interviewed him. I could have a real bad guy get on the phone right after his vasectomy or during his vasectomy. I never ask him. But during the vasectomy, we do the interview, we broadcast the guy's talking while he's getting his vasectomy, and I cannot believe how often they're going to just say exactly what we wish them to say. The word love is going to come out. That's where the act of love came about. It wasn't like I invented that. That was really what men talked about when they made their decision, when you'd ask them why they're choosing their vasectomy. That idea of positive masculinity, of aggregating that positive masculinity and sort of channeling it towards these greater social values, including taking care of their health, their family, and addressing the issues of the social complexities of life, are something we're really working on. And I got to say that today, I felt like the group, it was incredible, but it was in Africa where I felt the most hope, because they were I could not believe just how many men were involved. there were 100 men in the audience that were coming forth who had had their vasectomy. And I think that whole energy and that excitement is really what's keeping this thing going. And we're going to keep growing, and we hope you guys keep supporting us. But that's all I wanted to say. But I know Sheila would have said all these things. Just the internet is a little tough there. And I just wanted to...
Yeah, Jonathan, I want to say one thing about what you just said. And to tell everyone that men in Africa right now want the same things as men everywhere else in the world for their families: a good life for their children, good medical care for their children, a good education. So just like Jonathan said, it's not just men in Africa or men in Europe or men in USA. It's just men everywhere. There's this new movement of men who just want to be different, and men who are now looking at, some of us were raised by, we have men in Africa who are raised by their aunties and their uncles because maybe some of their parents died because of HIV/AIDS. Maybe they were not able to be there to support them because of economic constraints. But now men want to be able to have children that they can plan for. And I think this is what also Jonathan was putting across. And when you support these programs that we do in Africa, when we are able to train doctors because of the support you give us, when we are able to work with community health workers and build demand for this, when we are able to train the nurses who actually help the doctors and give them accurate information, then we are able to give men the chance. And like one of the speakers earlier talked about, we give them more choices to choose from for their family planning contraceptives.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and thank you, Jonathan, again for your intervention. It is just great to see this movement and the movement to continue to grow for men and boys and women and girls. That's what it's all about, right? And that choice. I'm going to go to a lightning round, and one of the things that the funders really want to do, I think we all want to do, is grow the pie. And I'm curious, and maybe Miles, we could start off with you, and then we could just go around. If there was a funder today, we got a phone call from, a new funder who was interested in investing in male engagement, what would you advise that they invest in and why? And how do we grow that pot? Miles, I'm curious how we grow the funding, especially for men and boys. So Miles, over to you, and then we'll go to each one of our you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Monica. So I think two things we would say. So SIF's perspective on this is that firstly, we need to re-energize vasectomy access. I mean, this campaign is absolutely crucial. Building this, growing this, is one of the ways in which we will address the missed opportunity that exists, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. And I echo what Sheila shared there. Within sub-Saharan Africa, we know there are opportunities to support exemplars. Some countries where we have policy leadership, we need to grow that. We should innovate in delivery on demedicalizing access. And we should work with partnerships that make such services part of a broader shift in gender norms, in masculinity norms, and make this energy generate the insights that support the next generation of male contraceptive methods, which is incredibly exciting. The second thing I'd say is that we need to institutionalize this much more routinely through investment strategies. And that is something that SIF is taking away, looking at our co-funding partnerships. How can we see stronger male engagement, male participation, male involvement as part of our routine programming work? And yeah, we're excited about making that investment case for the future. Over to you, Monica.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Miles. Erin, you're up next.
Sure. So I would say to invest in this area, I would focus on 3 things. One is investing in men and boys as family planning users or future users. And this means thinking about male-controlled modern contraceptive methods like Logan talked about. And supporting male-friendly services. So this means training providers on men's family planning needs, adapting services to meet men and boys where they are, thinking about hours and location, and looking at policy changes about health budgets, services, and products for men and thinking about what are the constraints for men to be able to access care, and including the sex of healthcare providers and perceptions that family planning services are only for men. And to reach younger men, adapting services and offering adolescent male-friendly services at the community level. The second would be to approach men and boys as supportive partners. And this is when they have a positive impact on their partner's family planning choices and contraceptive use through better couples communication and equitable joint decision-making and resource provision for FP services and support for continued use. And these interventions position men and boys as supportive partners, and they also seek to improve their knowledge and attitudes towards family planning and increase and enhance partner communication, joint decision-making, and shared responsibilities. And we've seen that these interventions have resulted in improved attitudes, couples communication, and joint decision-making around family planning. And these can be implemented within service delivery and social and behavior change programs. And the last approach is to support men and boys as change agents. And this is when they can use their social capital, their status, or power to take public action outside of their intimate sexual relationships to address barriers to FP and contraception, and especially related to harmful gender norms and inequalities. This public action needs to take place in collaboration with women and women's groups, and it can include discussion and advocacy to influence family and community members, peers, and religious and policy leaders to promote gender equality. And these programs that position men and boys as change agents within their families, social networks, communities, and societies are needed to cultivate equitable gender norms and an enabling environment for family planning use. These programs engage with men and women to challenge rigid gender roles and norms and advocate with institutional and government bodies for gender equitable policies and programs. And what sets these programs apart from those that engage men as users or supportive partners is the nature of public action that men and boys might take as a result. So in addition to understanding and challenging restrictive gender norms in their own lives and families, becoming more supportive partners and sharing parenting and household responsibilities, men and boys as agents of change, including as community or religious leaders, commit to sharing what they've learned with others, including with their own peers and their extended family. So they commit to using their social capital to propel positive change within the wider community. Thank you.
I love it, Erin. Thank you so much. Agents of change, Julia. And by the way, Chris Purdy has a really interesting question that he put in the chat along with Allison. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. And if we have a moment, we'll circle back. But let's hear from Julia. What would you have an investor invest more in?
I have to agree with Miles and Erin. I think it's very important to invest in education. Reaching men in areas where only men work and have groups of men, and that's what we try to do in projects. But yeah, education is, I think, the most important thing. And then availability of services, I would say, making sure that services are available, because that is a huge barrier right now that I see. But otherwise, I agree with everything else they said.
That's great. Thank you so much, Julia. Over to you, Logan. You have a millionaire who wants to invest. What would you have them invest in?
I mean, the position for Male Contraceptive Initiative is that new methods of male contraception are really the way that we can engage men and bring them into the fold more and more. But at the same time, I think we can do two things at once. And I think that it's necessary for us to set the stage for novel methods of male contraception by sensitizing, educating, and engaging the public now on vasectomy. I think that's sort of the great work that World Vasectomy does, is it sets the stage for these novel methods of male contraception. And I think that novel methods of male contraception have a way to bring men into the healthcare system more and more. I think that's a way that we can engage men and bring them into, we know that men don't seek healthcare at the same rate as their female partners. And I think that this is a way that we can engage men and bring them in, create an access point for them to be engaged with other healthcare areas. That includes mental health, other physical health, areas that we can really affect them and make men agents of change. That was used something earlier, and I really appreciated that statement. Jonathan mentioned that men are changing right now, and I think that it's time to cement vasectomy as a way to get men engaged today to prepare them for the methods of tomorrow. I think that really the panelists have mentioned everything that I would say, and so I just want to echo all of that to say that really new methods of male contraception are coming down the pipe, and it's important for us now to do two things at once, where we support the future of male contraception and ways to engage men and bring them into the fold more and more equitably. But at the same time, we have to access them now. We have to educate them now, and we have to bring them into the fold now such that those methods can be successful in the future.
Thank you so much, Logan. Sheila, over to you.
Thanks, Monica. I don't know if I have someone who is willing to invest $1 million, but if there was someone who was willing, I would say first to map out a client journey, whereby seeing when a man or a boy needs healthcare, where do they start from? Which health provider do they talk to until when they get that healthcare that they've gone for? And then training those medical providers and sensitizing them, because most of the challenges we face in Africa is that even the health providers themselves, besides not having the accurate information, like I mentioned earlier, they are averse to some of the contraceptive methods like vasectomy. So just to map up the client journey and then getting involved in mapping it out and creating a needs assessment, and then training and sensitizing the medical providers to make sure that they always have accurate information for the men and boys.
Sheila, wow. We just want to thank you so much. You are such a passionate and also an insightful person, and great response. And I believe if we're not bold and if we don't look to the future, we will not be able to bring in new funding sources. So thank you and Jonathan for reimagining what this world could look like. I also have an opportunity, maybe before I close, does anyone, I'm curious, I love Chris's question about, ways to leverage existing or already allocated resources that may place a greater emphasis on men, and was curious if, some of our funders, USAID, Bergstrom, or SIF had any thoughts about that.
I can comment on that, Monica. I've got one thought, is that thinking about how to bring men into the fold today, men aren't often really considered when it comes to contraceptive counseling. Someone goes into an OBGYN, someone who identifies as female and looks for contraceptive. There's very, very rarely a point where their partners are engaged and consider what sort of contraceptive options may work for their partner. Now, right now, of course, these options are limited, but at the same time, I think that there are a lot of men that can be availed to the services of contraception if we only engage them, have a conversation with them, and open up those dialogues. Of course, as Jonathan mentioned, contraception, vasectomy is an act of love. I think it's important for us to consider the couple context and really consider couples counseling at the same time as individual contraceptive counseling.
Monica, could I just say one last thing? I just wanted to say, I know that Chris Purdy, I asked that, so you should be on the panel, and Chris said, oh, I'm not a funder. And it is true that that's not what they do, but I have to just say, I have to shout out there and just say, if it weren't for DKT and Chris Purdy, World Vasectomy Day would not be where we are today. He has been the most generous and most consistent supporter. So I just have to put it out there. I mean, like I said over and over, he just believes in what we've been doing, and it's that kind of confidence, because the funding, it's not just about the money, the amount of money, it's also about the kind of having that faith and believing in it. When people like yourselves who are in that world invest in us, invest in these work, it kind of gives us that energy to believe that it's really possible, and it's helped stimulate the kind of engagement that we're really trying to do. So I just got to say thank you, Chris, for this. This panel wouldn't even exist if it weren't for Chris. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, DKT. And keep all the work going. I really appreciate it. And Monica, I pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And yes, I too, so admire Chris and his vision for a bold new world. Just in terms of what, Logan, and building on that, the question about, leveraging resources. We just recently had a very large postpartum, post-abortion family planning meeting in Nepal. So 150 people from 15 countries came. Each of those countries left with a strategic plan to accelerate. But I cannot tell you how much discussion there was about men, and including men in the conversation and postpartum and post-abortion. And I was so surprised. It was country driven, right? These were country-led conversations, and each one of those countries had some brilliant ideas about how they could leverage their current programs to do this. So I do believe, Chris, it's a great question, and we have to keep on challenging ourselves. How do we use our existing resources? And maybe building on, what Logan also said is, and the whole panel was saying, is we need to invest right now in changing the dialogue and conversation and movement to include men and boys for their reproductive autonomy and all of our reproductive autonomy. Reproductive empowerment is not just for girls and women, it's for men and boys too. And maybe on this last note, as we begin to look to the future, we create the ecosystem today for men and boys to be a part of this conversation, and looking to the future on male contraception, which is so exciting. I think we will have new methods in my lifetime, and certainly in the lifetime of Sheila and other people, but we have to, invest in that ecosystem right now. And so on behalf of FP 2030, we really want to create this clarion call to action. We ourselves are very committed at FP 2030 to ensure that men and boys are a part of our conversations at the country level, at our regional level, and at the global level. And we want to make sure that all partners in WVD and, around the globe are also, investing and, calling attention to this. So I think there's a lot we can do. We are stronger together as a movement, and we look forward to continuing to work with you, Jonathan, and your wonderful partners and teams. And I do want to give a big shout out to Sheila. So great to see people on the ground working night and day, and would love to hear more from Sheila and the team out in Africa and across the world about, how FP 2030 could be part of this movement and make sure that we're elevating the voices of men and boys. So thank you so much. And over to you, Jonathan.
Well, just to say, World Vasectomy Day 2024 is going to be in Zambia. That's where we're bringing the headquarters. So we got to give that shout out. And Sheila is going to be the linchpin of that. So we are smart to invest in her and invest in their program. And not just her, she has an amazing team. So many spirited and inspired people there. And I also want to introduce Oscar Guarin. Dr. Guarin is downstairs, been training, but he owns the only mobile vasectomy vehicle in the United States. And we're going on a post-Roe red state vasectomy road trip this coming spring to have that conversation about men and family planning within the context of this upcoming election season, because there's no doubt at all that this is an issue that matters, and that family planning is not just about family size, which it is about that too. It's really about the quality of life of the world we live in. That's why I moved from filmmaking to family planning, because I believed it was the way I could contribute the most. And all of you guys have been doing it, your lives and your careers. I salute you. I'm new to this, but I'm excited to be part of it, and what we've accomplished together, and we're going to keep growing. And thanks so much. I know Oscar wanted to say, he's got that mic in his hand. He's got a few things he wanted to say.
No. This is exciting. It's exciting to see all this this energy. We are just doing part of it by training people, but all the effort that happens when we mobilize the patients, when we create this energy in the different locations where we're working is what really moves this idea forward. So, and it's things like what you've done over this 11 years, what really makes a difference.